Welcome everyone. My name is Daniel Breston, and on behalf of Clearvision, welcome to our presentation on Service Desk, the heart of DevOps. I've been in IT for many years, before things like IT service management, the first big movement or the granddaddy of movements in my mind. And I've watched how IT service management over time has looked at the way that we in technology want to do things, when we want to do it, why we want to do it, how we want to do it, and how we want to support it, and what it will cost. And we're doing all of this from the customer's perspective. We're trying to figure out in IT service management exactly how technology, the people, the processes and ways that they work, and all the fun stuff that they get to use can help an organization solve problems, remove obstacles, be compliant, generate things of value. But along the way, as IT grew from mainframes to distributed technology to virtual technology, and we came across a lot of different constraints, obstacles, language being the biggest one, I think. We started to say things like, we want to do change, and people looked at us and said, what do you mean by that? And the people I'm talking to now are mainly the business people or maybe project managers. We got more and more things allocated to us as people wanted technology to do more and more, and we got busier and busier. And so what we were trying to do with the budget that was allocated to us, and not just the money, but the resources and the time, became less and less. And that impacted the way that we test. That impacted the quality that we have. And it didn't help the silos. It didn't help bridge any gaps. Instead, it created a bunch of walls between teams. And the various ways that we wanted to work in IT and the various ways that the business wanted to work didn't necessarily mesh. And that led to collaboration issues, and it also led to what I like to call technical debt, where we had a bunch of tools and a bunch of things that we had gone and delivered, but because we were constantly being challenged to do more and more, we never took the time to pay down the debt that we were creating. And that strain on the value chain, we really were doing everything that we could to hold things together. And if there was a major incident, well, things went from bad to terribly bad. And we thought that Agile might be able to help us. I mean, Agile has been around since before the Agile Manifesto. All of these different components, or many of these different components, had been around for a long time. And when they came together and started thinking about, well, we can do things better, we can do things faster, we started to appreciate the fact that what we were still doing was working and acting differently. The project management teams and the development teams were closer to the business, closer to the people that had the strategy and the vision and was able to articulate what they wanted versus when they wanted it. Well, the IT teams in the technology ops and IT service management side were still struggling to try to get a seat at the table, still struggling to try to get their voices heard of, but we need to be able to do this and we need to be able to do that. The development guys were being paid and bonused even to innovate. We were being paid and bonused to keep things up. And so while they were innovating, we weren't. And that interaction made the silos get even bigger. And at some point in time, things had to change, or things would go terribly, terribly wrong with the way the technology was supposed to be helping an organization. And thankfully, DevOps came along. DevOps is that blend of people and the way that they want to work and the way that they want to work by using the various aspects of IT service management, Agile, Lean, theory of constraints. I mean, I've seen this diagram with lots of different movements associated with it, but I like these three. How do you take these different aspects and try to keep them in such a way that you can get really fast, quality stuff, Agile, really look at the way that you're serving your customers, helping your employees work, removing waste from tasks, delivering value based on outcomes, Lean, and keep that minimal governance, keep that minimal life cycle of good processes, good ways of thinking of the technology strategy helping the business strategy, the way that we design our services and our products, the way that we transition them into live over time, and the way that we operate them. How can we continuously improve? Because all three of these movements, in fact all the movements associated with DevOps, have that at the heart of continual improvement. And we see that best illustrated if you've read the book The Phoenix Project or its follow-up, The DevOps Handbook, and many other books in the DevOps movement. We all talk about flow and feedback loops and continuous experimentation and learning. That flow from the development of an idea until that idea is operational. What type of feedback do we need along the way? And how do we learn from that during that entire life cycle so that the next time we're asked to do something, we can benefit from that across the entire organization, not just IT. Across our suppliers, that's just as important, integrating our suppliers into this. So all of this is paramount to our success. But what I found and what many others have found is that, yeah, okay, we got the request. Yes, okay, we created it. Yes, okay, we tested it. Well, sort of, maybe. And yes, we deployed it. But are we ready to support it really? There are lots of organizations that say, we build it, we support it. Are they the ones that are talking to the users and customers when they call? We forgot, in my mind, the service desk. The service desk is that heart of that technology lifecycle. The service desk is the heart of that development until something is operational and live. I mean, think about why you have a service desk. Think about how the service desk is there not just to say yes, but to get that request and try to help someone else figure out whether or not it's the best thing that can be delivered to the customer and how to best do so. And if what we deliver breaks, well, how do we fix it right then and there? The service desk acts as a balance between projects, product management, and services, service management, across that entire life cycle. My favorite view is the service desk is properly trained. It's part of the team day one as they start to work on a request. It participates in the testing and documentation and creating different scenarios activities. It owns the resolution processes, at least, of incident, problem, and request. But it's fully involved in release, deploy, and other processes involved in the technology lifecycle. Disaster recovery being an example. And because of that, the service desk, with the help of organizations like SDI, Service Desk Institute, IT Service Management Forums, British Computer Society, lots of other organizations, and software organizations such as Atlassian, Clearvision, have now created a way for the service desk to be proud and ready to be the first voice a customer hears. I've watched the service desk change over time from being poorly trained, underpaid, not really involved, to being part of that technology team straight from the beginning. And that's been very exciting to watch that metamorphosis. And I think that's why the Atlassian DevOps Service Desk cocktail, the way that they go and place Jira Service Desk at the center of their infinity loop of creating things and supporting things, shows that Service Desk, service support, customer-focused mentality that DevOps, Agile, IT service management, whatever term you like to use, is trying to engender into the organization, not just the technology aspect side, but across the entire organization. The Jira Service Desk looks at that processes that I mentioned before, wants to create some really good but flexible practices for service request, incident, and problem, wants to be involved with any change along the way so that they're ready to support it day one. They look at how Jira software, when it starts to track a request, starts to track a program of change, they start to comment on, well, we saw this before, we saw that before. Hey, do you remember this customer and what they did the last time we gave them something? They really liked this or they didn't like that. Oh, hold on, we need to let this supplier know this much in advance. These are the types of things a good service desk should be able to bring to the table so that as you start to design what you're doing, you're designing it in the best possible way, and you're ready for these different scenarios and contingencies as they occur before you go live. And you do that by sharing and learning across the teams with products like Confluence. Confluence allowing not only the program teams and developers to share information, but the IT service management and service desk teams to start to build the way that they're going to support and do things. So yeah, the incident management process, for instance, has 6 steps. But we're going to adapt those 6 steps for this particular software release or this particular versioning of infrastructure as a service, virtual service desk, virtual desk in general across an organization. How are we going to do that? We'll put all that type of documentation and let people share and learn from that in Confluence. And I don't have a problem with letting the service desk play with Bitbucket and Bamboo. Why shouldn't they figure out a way of going and helping how to build things and learning from that and how to test things, because they are testers. They test the incident management process. They test the service request process. And they should. They own those processes. They should be fully involved in making sure that whatever we're getting ready to give a customer is really ready to be given to that customer. This also helps the service desk team to grow. And so now, instead of going out and necessarily hiring individuals all the time to fulfill skills, you have that mentor coach mentality across your teams, and people are able to scale this way because people are more flexible in their work assignments. And that Jira Service Desk mentality of being able to say two-way feedback, hey, we're doing this, we need help here. Hey, we're doing that, we need help here. And doing it as a dashboard, reds and greens, doing it as feedback, are all great ways to go and collaborating on how do you go and say, even in a sprint for this particular type or of activity, let's go and find the best ways to log what's going to occur, how are we going to review that, how are we going to investigate it, templates that we need to do, etc., through the entire life cycle of managing an incident or request or a change or simple change request, such that when the customer is ready to take it, we're ready to support it as a technology team. And we can monitor that. We can use status page. We can go see what the customer is thinking about our products. We can go see how well it's performing. We can alert against that because the service desk is watching this. They're getting those alerts. They're looking at things. And because they've been involved from day one, they can help resolve things right first time at the desk when it gets called. And that really helps that key metric of, well, one of the key metrics of DevOps, mean time to recover and repair and restore and return back to the customer. And if they need help, well, they can use HipChat. And I think this screen articulates that. They get a request for help, they get a request, a ticket, they look at it, they try to do something with it. If they have an issue or it's a major issue, they can fire up a hot room real quick in HipChat. They can get the right people in place. If you're really very good with HipChat, you can have HipChat as a bot go out and get the logs so that when the people step into the room, all the information that they want is there. You can use the information out of the room as part of your postmortems. You can then update your run books by letting the service desk do that and feed it back into Confluence again. So now you have an immediate run book, an immediate way of dealing with things for the next incident. You can even take those requests and turn them back into requests that get added to the product backlogs of teams and get added back into the Jira software list, so that all of this now is quite iterative, but it's also quite inclusive of all the different areas that are involved. And that's what the infinity loop of the Atlassian lifecycle that we looked at earlier is really trying to show. So let's think about that for a second. We had an organization where the service desk wasn't quite as mature. When they got a ticket, it was more of a call desk than it was a service desk. They would capture what information they thought was relevant. They would pass that to another part of the technology teams or to a vendor, because there was a lot of outsourcing involved. The second level teams or vendor would look at it, indicate back to the service desk that the ticket wasn't complete. Could you go and gather some more information, please? And because of that, the life cycle of that incident was being extended. When we challenged the service desk and gave them the tools, and we challenged the teams involved who really didn't like bouncing back and forth, they just wanted to be able to help and go back to what they wanted to do and what they needed to do, to work together collaboratively, well, within 3 to 4 months, we had taken 20 hours off of all of our priority twos. Our mean time to return back to the customer and have the customer say, yes, you got it, thank you very much, this is really helpful. 20 hours in 4 months back. And we continued that cycle because it was iterative. Everyone was happier, the customer was happier, the teams were happier, and the number of escalations and bounces were reduced because the service desk got more intelligent at being able to fix things when they got the ticket. So they went from a call desk to truly being that service help desk that you want. We extended that thinking in another organization into the business realm. Their challenge was, or their opportunity was, that when people were hired, it normally took about a week before all of their profiles and their equipment were to the point to where they were now valuable workers at the organization. Think about it. You would hire somebody and basically for the first week, they were on holiday while people were sorting out all the different things that would allow them to become true workers. And when the new CTO was affected by that, he challenged the technology organization with this simple request. When people start working, they start working. You have 1 month. I don't know what it's going to take for you to do that, but we have 200 to 300 people every month that we hire in our organization. We're growing across 5 countries, and we need to come up with a better way of dealing with this situation, because we have 200 to 300 weeks of people getting paid but not actually doing any work of value to the organization. We collaborated with HR. We fired up a project. We collaborated with HR. We looked at the way that things were working today. We put that into Confluence. We looked at the way that we wanted to have things work today. We put that into Confluence. We created an iterative way of changing things. And then within 1 month, we achieved what the CTO had asked for. When people started working, they started working. The role profiles match the technology profiles that individuals received, and HR, now owning that process, worked with the service desk to say, okay, we know that someone is going to be starting on this date. And when they started, the service desk had already obtained the equipment, created all the role profiles, and worked with HR to train that individual on anything that was needed to make that person a valuable part of the organization. So this is another example of the service desk being involved, technology being involved across the life cycle, but now extending it into the business by having the right type of tools and using products like HipChat, because the main service desk was in Belgium, but lots of the different HR organizations were in these different countries. So we had to figure out a way to collaborate with them across borders. And that's what I like about Jira Service Desk. Jira Service Desk allows you to create that knowledge, allows the service desk to become that advice place, allows the service desk to issue track, excuse me for coughing, allows the service desk to manage requests from the time that they start until the time that they're fulfilled. And if there's a major incident, allows the service desk to take ownership of that and coordinate and collaborate with everyone that's involved, but keep people aware of what's happening with other tools like Status Page, and let people know what's happening, such that through the resolution of that incident, communication and collaboration is occurring. Now, some of you are going, yeah. Well, the State of DevOps reports, if you haven't read the State of DevOps reports from Puppets and the DevOps Research Association, I strongly suggest that you go and find them for the last few years. This is a page from the 2017 report, and you can see that high-performing organizations, and what we mean by high-performing organizations in this report are banks, insurance companies, retail organizations, hospitals. These types of organizations with high-performing IT supporting that organization are deploying faster, changing things faster, fixing things faster, and having a lower failure rate all along that life cycle. And if you read the report, it's that service mentality, that product mentality, that team mentality that's allowing that type of interaction and improvement to occur. It doesn't occur overnight, pardon me again, it doesn't occur overnight, but as it occurs, it just takes off. People are always saying, how do we scale this? Well, it'll scale on its own, honest. As your processes change and as your tools support that, like the Atlassian lifecycle, your organization will morph into something better, faster, safer. I'd like to thank Clearvision for the opportunity to talk about the service desk and talk about IT service management. David Morgan is going to lead the Q&A session. He's the Clearvision Service Desk Solutions Manager, and his contact details are here. I hope you've enjoyed this, and please look forward to more Clearvision sharing of ideas and concepts. Thank you very much again. My name's Daniel Breston.
Thank you very much for that, Daniel. That was a very good presentation. Good morning to everybody out there. Just wanted to invite you now to post some questions. I have with me my colleague here at Clearvision, Richard Crampton, who's one of our senior technicians. I'm David Morgan, Service Desk Solutions Manager. Between myself, Daniel, and Richard, we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
David, can I kick us off, please?
Of course you can, Daniel, yes.
Just curious, based on your experience, when organizations have seen Jira Service Desk go live, what has been their response? I mean, Jira Service Desk came late to the picture, really.
Yes, I think for many years now, Jira Service Desk has never been regarded as competition to many of the large ITSM legacy tools. I think Jira Service Desk now brings something new to the table and into the ITSM world, in that it now brings together the second and third level teams that we've seen that have worked quite autonomously within businesses, and brought them together with the first level service desk people. So yeah, the people that work at the front end, that's taking all the incidents and so on, are now finding it much easier to collaborate with the software development teams. And so, as you've quite rightly said, Daniel, it puts Service Desk right at the heart of the DevOps. So yeah, I mean, from looking at it from our customers' point of view, where we've introduced Jira Service Desk, they've been very pleased with what they've seen.
Interesting question about what is the best strategy to implement this kind of solution. And from a pure DevOps take or an IT service management take, this is like picking any other tool. The tool is the last thing that you want to consider after you've looked at the flow of work. So what is the flow of work from idea to live, strategy to operations? Who's supposed to do what, when, and why? And then what tools do you want to have to go and help them do that? So have you done a Moscow exercise, for instance, must, should, could, won't?
Yeah.
And then once you have that, can you present that to the right people to get their buy-in from a pilot? I mean, David, how do you approach it?
Well, I'll tackle that question the best I can from my point of view, from the planning point of view. I'll hand over in a moment to my colleague Richard that actually does much of the technical consultancy and the implementation. But from a project management point of view and from a startup point of view, what we tend to do is we look at what the customer has, and we see, we try to examine what the pain points are. We look at what they've got in position, and we try to make an assessment as to how big the project's going to be. And from that point of view, we then go and do a discovery. From the discovery, we then often put in place a proof of concept to prove what we're actually saying will actually work, and then we give the customer an opportunity to have a play around and see if that works. And then based on that, we will then take it to go live. And unlike many of the other ITSM legacy tools, we can actually implement Jira Service Desk in a very short time. I'll hand over to my colleague Richard who has done many of these implementations, and perhaps get his viewpoint.
Thanks, David. Hi, my name is Richard Crampton, Senior Technical Consultant at Clearvision. In terms of how to go about this, it often depends on the organisation we're dealing with, whether they have an RFP to look at, if they have an existing solution they're looking to replace. Quite often it can be a challenge because requirements come in the form of our current solution works this way. Can we simply replicate that? So some of the main challenges we have for first and foremost is making sure they understand how Jira Service Desk works, how they can get the most from it, how it can replace their existing tooling, and what their existing tooling is provided. Just like the other Atlassian tools, Service Desk can in fact be extended by a number of plugins and customizations. So first and foremost, it's just understanding what is required, what are the current pain points. In terms of the actual process, I very much back a process whereby we start very small. We'll start and we'll simply do a proof of concept. So rather than trying to go through lots of requirements and trying to work out, actually, is there value in this? At an early stage, get to the point whereby it's worth investigating further and do a very small proof of concept to prove part of the functionality. Quite often, this will actually make it easier to elicit further requirements, because at this point, the client's getting an understanding of how it can all fit together and actually see the bigger picture rather than just discussing it. And then from that point forward, move forward with actually, from the proof of concept into a pilot, production pilot, and then further rolling out. This is what we've done on some of our larger contracts, and we find that sort of iterative process actually really helps drive delivery and get stakeholders on board as part of that. So when we go to final production rollout, everyone's got a good understanding about the capabilities, how it works, how it all fits together, and even we may have documented all of that within an actual knowledge base in Jira Service Desk, so agents themselves have got access to all the information about how it's set up and why. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Richard. We have a question from our audience out there. It's a very similar question, actually. What is the best strategy to implement this kind of solution in an organisation? I mean, who needs to accept this kind of great solution? The director, managers, etc. Perhaps I could answer that one. We tend to find that when we go out to look at our customers' requirements, there are many stakeholders that have an interest in the implementation of Jira Service Desk. It's not just the service desk manager, it's not the operations manager. It goes right the way up to the top, to the CEO and CIO, and so everybody has an interest in it. As Richard says, we often have to fill out an RFP and so on, and in doing that, we have to complete many questions, and we do tend to find that every organisation has different questions, different requirements. And I think the beauty of Jira Service Desk is that on the whole, we're able to put a big tick in the yes box to most of the questions that were asked. Obviously, Jira Service Desk doesn't cover all of the ITIL processes. We're well aware of that, but what it does do is it covers the four main ITIL processes that we use on a service desk very, very well. Those processes being obviously incident management, change management, request fulfillment, and problem management. And on top of that, if you put some add-ins onto the solution, then you get CMDB. Obviously, Confluence provides you with knowledge base. You've got release management, and there are other processes that can be written into Jira Service Desk as well. So overall, it's able to encompass all the requirements that you'd expect from a good service desk tool. I hope that answers the question. Do we have any other questions?
Richard, I have a question.
Sure.
For the longest period of time, until people really started growing up and looking at the way they used the service desk, no one really talked to them. And now that developers have access just as much as anybody else to Jira Service Desk, Do you see them using it? Is it beneficial for them to be able to track defects and keep and monitor tasks and things that they're doing by using Jira Service Desk? There's a very fine line between an incident and a defect, for instance.
Yes, there is. It's an excellent question. I think that the main point about this is we're talking about Jira Service Desk. We're also talking about Jira software. They are fundamentally built on the same base, which is Jira. So where we see developers actually being excited about Service Desk may not necessarily be in the fact that they're actually on a Service Desk actively using it, but the fact that they could, for example, okay, let me give an example. Customer raises an incident, and you're a company that has software that you provide to your customers. Customer raises incident, I've got a problem with a bit of software. You investigate that incident, and you go, yep, that is actually a problem. Now this is going to be tracked by a bug in a Jira software project by the software team. Now, previously, without Jira Service Desk, quite often, whoever owned that support ticket would have to go and keep on chasing the development team. What's the update? What's going on with this? Or at a bare minimum, they'd have to go into the Jira software project and have a look at any updates there. Now, using the power of the automation engine within Jira Service Desk, you can automate that entire flow to the degree where the developer can be removed if they want to be. They can work on their bug in a software project, and then updates that happen to that ticket, for example, when it's resolved, can automatically be pushed back into the service desk to put a comment for an agent, to put a comment for a customer, or even to cascading close those tickets. So quite often when we're talking to developers, their excitement is the ability that they're not going to be chased. They can do their work in Jira, and that will flow to other aspects of Jira, such as Service Desk, and it all builds in on top of that one engine. So there's less multiple keying of information, there's less disconnection between the teams. It's less siloed because fundamentally all teams are using the one tool, Jira, but different flavors of it. Does that answer your question, or was that sort of a bit off track of what you're asking?
Nope, perfect,
Not
thanks.
at all. Pleasure.
Okay, that's great. Does anybody have any other questions? No. If there's no other questions, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. I hope you found this all very beneficial. Once again, I'd really like to thank Daniel. Daniel Breston has done a fantastic presentation again for us. And I thank you all for attending. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.